Welcome everyone to the SOE Q Club Tech Share Out. This is a culminating event for the Q Club, and they are all set to share their highlights from the Q experience. So first of all, I would like to give a special shout out to Dr. Megan Geis and Sarah Haig for their coordination of the TQP grant, which provided this opportunity to School of Education credential candidates. So here are the SOE Club members. They each applied to be part of the club at the beginning of the academic year. They were selected, and selected members are required to attend regular meetings throughout the quarter and are granted paid travel to 2 Q conferences. The first conference we attended was the Fall Q Conference in Sacramento. It was a great conference to introduce the club to the Q experience. We had an awesome time learning innovative ways to implement classroom technology while networking with fellow educators. There were many seasoned educators attending the conference who wished they had learned about Q at the beginning of their career. So it was awesome to have pre-service teachers getting a head start with Q and learning about all of its innovations. Then in the winter quarter, the club, as the Q Club, hosted a series of presenters to show us some great innovations in classroom technologies. We first hosted our very own special education coordinator, Dr. Wood, who gave us a great presentation on the use of these cool little robots called EvoBots and they're used for lessons in coding and STEM education. And then we also got a special visit from Q's Chief Learning Officer, John Carippo. He gave us a very engaging and interactive presentation on the effective uses of online resources available for teachers who would like to streamline their lessons and drastically reduce the amount of time spent on grading and providing feedback. Then that led up to our final conference, the Spring Q Conference, which obviously ended up being a virtual conference due to the COVID-19 situation. The online conference was very well put together and allowed attendees to asynchronously participate in lessons and also view recordings and sessions. So we actually got a bonus and we're able to view every session. Whereas when you're attending a conference in person, you might miss out on a session when you have to choose between 2 sessions that are happening at the same time. And another feature was that the sessions were recorded and made available for weeks after the event. So that gave us plenty of time to absorb all of the information that was presented. And I'd like to say that the way that the virtual Spring Q Conference was delivered is an excellent example of how you can effectively use technology to provide quality distance learning. So, see here. So the final requirement of being a part of the Q Club is to share a favorite classroom technology or innovation learned from the Q experience with their fellow candidates and the SOE community. And so that's what we're here to do today. So I'll now hand it over to the Q Club to do their presentations. There'll be time for Q&A at the end of each presentation. Please use the Q&A feature or raise your hand to ask your question. Thank you. And first off, we're going to have Devin.
All right. Hi, everyone.
Share your screen.
Yeah. Oh, mine says host disabled, attendee screen sharing.
All right, let's fix that. There you go.
All right. Cool. So, um, as I was saying, my name's Devin Gonzalez. I'm a student teacher under the single subject English area credential. My pronouns are she, hers, and the biggest takeaway I had from the Q Club was just a tech genre, assistive technology in the classroom. And I found out that there were a lot of cool apps and things that you can use for students with learning disabilities, as well as emerging bilingual students. And those tools, of course, I have a bunch of them listed in here. I have a few resources available from the pros themselves that were at Q conferences and gave an abundant amount of technology to use. So I'll briefly go over it as a general area of technology, and just keep it in mind that even though these are typically technologies intended to help emerging bilingual students and students with learning disabilities, they really can help any and all students. So to begin, again, assistive technology is tech that's intended to help emerging bilingual students and students with learning disabilities in the classroom. And going into this, my idea of it were, earplugs, very low tech things, earplugs, pencil grips, calculators, Post-it notes, spell checkers, very basic technology understanding. And then after specifically going to presentations by Martin Cisneros, which I linked to here and can send those out if people are interested, as well as Shannon and Amanda's presentation, I learned that there are a ton of apps that are free that schools will pay for you to use, that you can have subscriptions if you're able to, but mainly a lot of them offer free trials anyways that are great for both teachers and students and even admin. So after primarily the fall conference were the ones where I got a lot of this initial information. So going forward after that conference, and specifically in my distance learning that we've been doing, I've started incorporating things such as closed captioning on PowerPoints. Had no idea that existed, but it does on both now Microsoft PowerPoint and Google Slides, which is awesome. Screencastify or Loom, those are both recording devices. I have one over here as an example, Screencastify, which is totally free, or there is a free version of it that I've been using, which is great, where you can record both your screen and yourself and alternate between the two. That are just, it's really great, I think, for students in distance learning to still see your face while you're talking to them and giving them lessons. And it's great too for students who need assistive technology because they can go back and look at those recorded presentations and watch it as many times as they need. As well as HyperDocs, which I think Nolan said he's going to talk about more later, so I'm not going to steal his thunder with that one, but great tool. It's great too, just to embed. I use it over here for calendar, so I embed the assignment links for the students. That way they don't have to scroll through Google Classroom a ton. But I would also say it's great to link additional resources for students. So if you have a student who might benefit from a video option, you can link a video option in your presentation or in your assignment templates. If you have students, like my kids love audiobooks, so I always link audiobooks to their readings if I can. So just things like that, great for HyperDocs. And then in general, Google Classroom. I know a lot of us are probably becoming very familiar with Google Classroom at the moment. The main tools, Google Translate is wonderful for emergent bilingual students. And for me too, if they need to code switch, it's totally okay in this classroom in the environment that I've been creating for them. And I can use it as well to understand what they're writing about in their native language. Google Forms, which I think Lizette said she's going to talk about, so I'm not going to go into detail on that one either. I don't want to steal thunder. Voice typing, awesome for students with learning disabilities and emergent bilinguals, just to hear themselves and to practice speaking. As well as, if they struggle typing, it's sometimes way easier for them to just voice their ideas and then go back and edit it and clean it up than to try and write it all out. As well as, again, activity templates. I make example templates that students can make copies of and edit to their need. So that's how it looks right now for me in a virtual classroom, and particularly in an English classroom. But in the future, there's going to be a lot of text, so please don't get overwhelmed. I'll explain it. In the future, these were just some of the tools that stood out to me as a teacher, and then tools that I can also provide to my students. My primary goal for my future classroom is to create a toolbox going into the year of tech that can benefit any and all students, and to make that available, whether it's on my personal website, on Google Classroom, or whatever website the school operates through. So for me, just some simple ones that I thought of for teaching. Adjusting YouTube playback speed is huge, particularly if you use videos like Crash Course, Hank Green, John Green. They're great resources. Sometimes they talk a little fast. So I like to slow it down just however much my students need so that they can take good notes, or so I like to slow it down. That's been wonderful. Recording presentations, again, I mentioned. Having certain presentations, again, I mentioned. Certain apps like Pixabay or Adobe Spark to find visuals. Visuals are and especially when there's a new concept introduced, visuals can solidify their understanding. And we've been using in our own classes a lot. It's awesome. There's an immersive extension, but also in our own classes a lot. Awesome. There's an immersive that that's wonderful and really assists emerging bilinguals in processing their readings and slowing it down and breaking it down for them. Mercury Reader is another one. It's so great. It removes any ads if you use online stuff, removes all ads from the page. I don't know if you've ever used an online article and there's like a Nissan ad in the middle of it. That can be really distracting for kids. So Mercury Reader is great. It's free and it removes any ads and distractions from an article, which is awesome. And I didn't even know that existed. Google Drawing for ELD instruction. Again, visuals are huge. That was one of my huge takeaways from 418 is that visuals, visuals, visuals for these kids. So using Google Drawing, you don't have to be an artist to use it. It's just kind of a fun way to incorporate it. And then the other one I have on here is My Name, My Identity. One of the huge things, there are resources for helping you learn how to pronounce kids' names. This is specifically so that it's just creating a safe environment for them, and names are important. So that's one of my goals, is to use that resource and take the pledge and really practice using my kids' names first and last in the classroom. So yeah, that's the teacher side. And then for the students, just encouraging voice typing is huge, and maybe being able to set up something in my classroom if I'm able to, where they can have like a little podcast studio and record themselves. Read and Write is an app that translates text to audio. So if there isn't an audiobook version already out there that's free on YouTube or something like that, Read and Write is an app that does it for free. Google Translate, again, huge, 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 just to build confidence in the classroom. Whiteboard mode and Flipgrid allows students to draw and edit and annotate and do whatever they'd like, which is awesome for their understanding. Creating podcast projects. This was a huge one that Martin really drove home with us for emerging bilingual students, because podcast projects, they're speaking and they get to record it at their own pace, but they also get to listen to it back, and they get to say, oh, I need to work on this, or I want to do this next time. And it allows them to practice miles on the tongue, and practice speaking and where maybe they need help either grammatically or with certain words and that sort of thing. And they can share that with me and I can listen to it, etc. So podcast projects are huge. And then, yeah, like I said, building a toolbox for them. So those are just some of the apps that I would like to include and build off of. But there are so many out there. I think one of the presenters said once that there's like 180 new education apps like a day or something crazy like that. So there's a ton out there, which is awesome. And this is just, my basic overview of the assistive technology that you can use for any and all of your kids, especially right now when a lot of the teaching unfortunately has to happen at home and on their own. So that's what I've got. Does anyone have any questions? And you can also email me. I put my email up there if you want links and that sort of thing, of course.
Uh, all right, I'm not seeing any questions here, so we can move on to Nolan. Take it away.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much, Devin. That was awesome and a lot of really good information. I am going to talk to you in a little bit of a different format. Today, I'm going to be talking to everyone about something called hyperdocs. And now, hyperdocs was something that I learned about at the fall Q presentation. So that was back in, or conference rather, that was back in October. And it was something that I got in that first week of October, and I was able to utilize in my classroom just a few weeks after that. So one of the really cool things about Q is you get a lot of big pedagogical style presentations, and a lot of them give you tools like Devin had, like this one, that you can go to the conference and then use in your classroom the Monday after that conference. And so first, a little bit, what are hyperdocs? Hyperdocs are a really great way to put a lot of information in one place that is very easily accessible for all of your students. And the way it sort of works is you get your information, whatever information you want that to be, and you get it set up on a Google Doc like I have right here. This is actually the presentation that, or not the presentation, the project that I did in my class just 2 weeks after Fall Q. We were in the middle of I'm a history and social studies person, so we were in the middle of our unit on the Industrial Revolution. And our big essential question from that unit was, what are the unintended consequences of the Industrial Revolution? And so while most of the unit was focused on what was happening in the 1800s, this was a capstone project that we did to talk about the same unintended consequences as seen in our society today. So we were tackling big picture ideas like child labor, like deforestation, like pollution and whatnot. And so what we have here is the form that was given to our students in Google Doc form. I'm a big Google Suite person, as I'm sure lots of you are. So we have our instructions page here. And the way hyperdocs work is you attach a photo underneath some sort of topic, and you get a link that is attached to that photo. It doesn't have to be a photo. It can be its own form of text. It can be a little infographic if you want. But the way we set it up was to get our students learning about child labor. We got them some context information as seen in the link to this photo on this map. We got them a context video. So for those visual learners, not necessarily as much the people who enjoy learning from reading, they were able to watch what was happening in front of their eyes. And then we got a little bit more of the information that we wanted in another website over here. And so we were able to do this for multiple different subjects. So here's one talking about the environment and whatnot. And so that's sort of the basics of hyperdocs. We've got information that is streamlined in an easy way. And so a lot of the benefits of hyperdocs are, firstly, it does streamline information in an accessible way for students, like I was saying earlier. Instead of letting them loose into the wild world of the internet, where there are literally millions of sources on what you're trying to get them to look for and research, you bring that information to them. And it's a little bit easier than them going off and finding God knows what when they're trying to look up some of these effects of the Industrial Revolution. It is a useful tool for research, but it also doesn't limit the creativity that happens in research. We want our students to become digital citizens, global citizens. So we don't want to take away their experience in learning how to research. So you're able to utilize hyperdocs as context information, and then let them go out and, based on that, find their own stuff and teach more of those 4 C's and some of those ideas that we want our students, that digital literacy that we want for them. And it still allows for student choice. We're not just cutting up a few pieces of information and feeding it to them. In a project like this project, we have multiple different subjects, so it requires a little bit more front-loading work done by the teacher, but that is something that is very easy to do once you've got the hang of the HyperDocs format. And so now, my favorite part of HyperDocs is the products that you're able to create using this, and also the circumstances that you are able to use it in. So for our first HyperDocs project, we did it for industrialization. The product that we had them create was we had them create these videos that, like these mini documentaries using Adobe Spark. So they created documentary style videos using easy to find internet tools. We were also able to, let's see here. Sorry, my toolbar is blocking me a little bit. For the next unit on imperialism, to learn more about these places that they went, we had them create online travel guides. So we used a very similar format with note-taking with the HyperDocs, and then they went and created travel websites, which was another fun way that we like to incorporate that digital literacy. They're practicing something that is a very applicable 21st century skill, right? And then it can also be done for more traditional elements in school. We had for the rise of Adolf Hitler, we gave them another sort of HyperDoc style assignment. And this time they created PowerPoint presentations that they were able to give to their fellow classmates to work on presentation skills and whatnot. And then the HyperDoc style project was also incredibly useful because we were able to use it during distance learning. Once they got familiar with this model of education, then the very first week that we had to provide content after all the kids were sent home, we used this same type of format for note-taking, and we're able to find those interactive ways to keep students involved during distance learning. HyperDocs are great for in-class projects. For a teacher like me who wants to get very involved with project-based learning in the future, I can't wait to use this sort of stuff for providing context for those projects and providing means to create those really cool products for those projects. And as we saw here, it can be used for distance learning as well. So I know that was a lot about HyperDocs, but it was the biggest takeaway that I had from my first Q conference, and it's something that you can always use in your classroom for just about any style of learning. So I love them. I'm big on them, and that's HyperDocs. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate it.
All right, are there any questions for Nolan? Oh, here we go. All right, Nolan, we got a question for you. What are your thoughts on having students create HyperDocs on a topic that they are an expert?
I think that's awesome. I think that is a wonderful idea, especially if you want to introduce the idea of HyperDocs more at the beginning of a year, instead of you as a teacher standing in front of the classroom and explaining to them, hey, here are HyperDocs. You can get them actually getting that hands-on experience creating them. Then you are able, then they are creating their own knowledge. So as we can see from this question from an anonymous attendee, the possibilities of using HyperDocs are incredibly widespread and are absolutely not limited to the way that I used them. And so Brandy, I see you asked, how do you embed a HyperDoc? It's a super easy thing. You can find plenty of tutorials about it on Google if you just type embed links and whatnot. The easiest way that I do it is you just put a picture on a document, you press Command K, I believe, and you get to add a link to it right there. So plenty of tutorials on Google. It is not a hard thing to find, but if you want me to help you walk you through that after this is done, I'm more than available to do so. Any other questions? I see one over there in the chat.
In the chat, yeah.
Leah, have you thought about making a quick how-to for parents and students with the nuts and bolts for how to do this? I have not thought about doing so, but it would be something that is incredibly easy to do, and would be something that if I were to be utilizing this in distance learning in the future, it would absolutely be a step that I would want to do, because with distance learning, obviously you're not able to show students what you're doing in person, but making a video for that. If that's, again, Leah, if that's something that you would like me to do as a resource for others, I'd be more than happy to. Just get in touch with me afterwards.
All right, I don't see any further questions, so let's move on to Lisette. Take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Lisette. I am a single subject mathematics candidate. I will start sharing my screen and get ready to go here. All right. So as Devin mentioned earlier, I'm going to be doing a presentation on Google Forms, a different way to sort of organize the responses you get in Google Forms, and just a quick, easy organization little trick that you can use through Google Forms. And first of all, thank you both Devin and Nolan for those presentations. I'm taking notes as I'm going through these presentations too, because I haven't even seen them. So this is all really useful information for all of us. So thank you guys. Okay, with that, before I go ahead and start my PowerPoint here, my little title here is like, Google Forms can do that? Didn't know. So I really took this away from our spring Q conference, which was all virtual, that Warren mentioned earlier. And so I'm going to be walking you guys through this example using a Google form that I used with my students after I learned about this little trick through Google Forms, after I watched the virtual presentation through the Spring Q conference. So I went ahead and made up this Google form as a way to check in with my students through this distance learning. So you can see it was on April 20th. And at this point, I hadn't even had any contact with my students at all yet. So this was a way for me to, touch base with them pretty quickly and see, what are you guys up to? So I had them fill in, first of all, their name and their period, which will come in handy later. And then I just had them tell me like what they've been doing so far. Are you doing homework all day, every day? Hopefully not so much for me, actually. Are you playing video games, babysitting, etc.? And then I asked two little, like, do you like distance learning? Do you find it easy? Is it hard? What makes it hard? And then I asked, like, what could my co-teacher and I, do to make this experience better for you? That was just my quick little Google check-in form that I sent out to my students. And so the key right now to remember as I'm talking about my presentation is that I needed them to check what period they were a part of, because this is how I'm separating my information. So I sent my Google form out to all of my kids rather than sending one to my second period and one to my third period. I sent just the same one to everyone, and then my little trick that's going to come up later is how I organized it later on. So once all my students responded, this is what my, actually I'm going to start my presentation because I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so our learning outcome for today, once it loads, okay, we're going to learn how to utilize an add-on in Google Forms as a new way to help you organize all those responses that you're getting in a way that's best going to suit your needs. And for me, my need was separating them by period, so second period and third period. So our first step that I just talked about was we have to create our Google form. So mine was a Monday morning check-in. Maybe the Google form that you want to send out could be for admin or, you know, school teachers. Maybe admin wants to send out a Google form to all of their staff and just collect information from their staff, like what's your favorite Starbucks drink? Or, you know, what's your favorite junk food? Something like that. I'm not sure, but, or when's your birthday? Things like this. Just a way to collect information, right? That's what we use our Google forms for. So again, pay attention because the period was how I was separating my information, and hopefully this will become clear later. Okay, so our second step then is when we are creating this new spreadsheet, excuse me, when we're creating our Google form, if we go to the responses section, we need to hit this little green icon, which is going to create a new spreadsheet that will collect all of our responses into a Google Sheet. So when I was first showing you that Google form, so once I click this green little button, it's going to generate this sort of spreadsheet once my students start, once they start responding to that Google form. So it's going to directly, you can see up here all of the questions that I asked. It's going to directly, you know, input everything that they asked, everything that they filled in right into this one huge Google Sheet. So everything's kind of all over the place right now. You can see it's a little bit messy. There's a lot going on. So now we're gonna keep going. So once you hit that green, create a new Google Sheet, your students' responses or whoever is responding to this Google form will go right into that spreadsheet. Awesome. Step 3. Okay, now this is the add-on that we are talking about. This is the app we're talking about. Easy Query right there down in the highlighted section. We need to go into this Google Sheet now that that has been generated from clicking that green button, and we need, or any, once you've installed it, you can use it with any Google Sheet that you have. So what we need to do now is go into our Google Sheets, hit this add-on, and my video is blocking, hit this add-on button, and then we're gonna search for Easy Query. So once you hit add-ons and you're gonna hit, I think it says like maybe get add-ons. Yes, that's what it says. So get add-ons, and then you're going to go ahead and search for Easy Query, and you're going to install it. And so mine already says installed because I already have this app in my Google Sheets. So once you've installed it, hopefully I'm not going too fast. Let me know if I need to slow down. We're going to bring us to step number 4. Okay, so we've installed the app. After installation, and once we have our generated responses by people who have responded to our Google form, whether that be students or staff or whoever this Google form is intended for, then now we want to start organizing this in a way that's going to suit our needs. And for me, it was separating things by period, second period students and third period students. For if you sent it out to all of your staff, maybe it might be by department, so English department or math department, or maybe it's by birthdays. Maybe you want to collect every birthday. So for January, you're going to create a sheet. February, you create a sheet. I'm just giving you guys some ideas of what you could do with this app, Easy Query. So once you're in your Google Sheet, you're going to go down to your add-ons again, over to Easy Query, and you're going to hit create the sheet. So then it's going to bring you to a little sidebar menu that's going to appear on the right-hand side of your screen. So this is now where you're plugging in information in order to organize your information that you've gathered. So what you really only need to worry about is entering a new sheet name. And so for me, what I did was I said, I want my, whoops, let's go back. I want my sheet name to be second period. And I'm gonna organize all of my second period responses into this new sheet that's being created. So that's what I would enter there in the enter new sheet name. So then you'll recognize I'm moving down here to where it says filters are optional, but this is sort of key to using Easy Query for me. So I'm going to move to the next screen, and we're going to be looking at this section of the sidebar menu, just zoomed in a little bit. Awesome. So filters are the key. So this is my blown up version, and where I want, so you're going to select the column of responses that the students entered or whoever they were. So for me, it should have been column G. This is where the students entered in their period number. So it happened to be in column G, wherever the information you want, whether it was, let's say they entered in their birthday and it was in column B. So let's say you went to column B, and then what the value is, you want it to be like, let's say you want the keyword to be January. They had a January birthday. So in here, you would enter in January. So for me, I entered in 2 because I wanted the second period responses. So this is all just reading for later. I'm going to go ahead and make this PowerPoint accessible to you all. So I'm not going to go ahead and read it right now, just to save on time. And then that brings us to our 5th step. So you'll notice down here, there's a blue button that says add. You're going to want to hit add then, which is our step 5. And then I'm going to go back a few more slides. Down here, it says create, I believe, if you can see that. Okay, there we go. Where does it say create? I apologize. Okay, it must have cut off somewhere, because down here on the end of this create sheet, it has a little button that says create. So you're gonna hit add and then create. And then you can see this sort of snapshot. This is the sort of bottom menu bar of my Google Sheet. And so first of all, we started out with the form responses 1, which is where every single response went into once my students started responding to this Google form. And so what I went ahead and did, and I told the Google form, this Google Sheet, to separate my second period responses into this second period little tab, this new sheet. And then I also did it for my third period. So I did the same exact thing, but instead of the value, I put 3 for that value. And ta-da, this is what the end result is going to look like. So once I clicked on that second period sheet down at the bottom, it gathered all my second period students. You can see 2, 2, 2, and it had all of their responses back. So it just made it a lot easier for me to see who responded from which period, and just organize my information a little bit better instead of you know, having this giant spreadsheet that was sort of all over the place. All right, that is my presentation for Google Forms and or Sheets, I guess. And again, I want to have this presentation available to you all, of you, so that way you can go back and, you know, go through it a little bit slower. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lisette. We got a question in the Q&A there, if you want to answer.
Okay, I'm having trouble opening it. Let me stop sharing. There we go. Are there other Google Form add-ons that I explored or would recommend? Yes, there were, and I'm forgetting the name of them. So let me just, okay, so Autocrat was another one that was really cool. These all have a lot that go into, you know, using them through Google Forms. And so I'm going to give you the name of the website that I got all this from. His name is Brent Coley. Let me type this into the chat box. Brent Coley, excuse me. And he's at brentcoley.com. And he has a ton of, you know, tutorial videos that you can check out, and that are probably a lot more organized than mine, but I would highly recommend going to check them out. This was a really cool presentation that I really liked, to use Google Forms in just smarter, more efficient ways. Yeah, thanks for the question. I don't know if everyone can see that website. Maybe I should put it in the chat box so everyone can see it.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right, and if there isn't any other questions, we'll go ahead and move on to Willie. Go ahead and take it away. Can you hear me, Willie? Yeah, you're actually muted.
Are you? Am I live, Warren?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Good.
Sorry, our connection seems to be working through it.
All right. Yeah.
I'm going to work on sharing my screen here, and I really wanted to focus in on Flipgrid in our SOE class with Dr. Ronan. And there was quite a few presentations in Q discussing applications for Flipgrid. And I just find it to be very user-friendly and sort of intuitive as I move through and create interactive presentations for students. So I'm sharing my screen. As I say, I seem to be usually glitchy today, and I'm just working on cruising right on through it. So this time of year, I'm noticing that there's so many flowers out and a lot of and I put together some videos and some assignments using Flipgrid. So let me scroll up to the top here and see. Okay, so garden exploration with Mr. Richardson. And I started off, one of the presenters at Q this year was talking about creative ways to utilize technology. And one of the things he did was a time lapse. And I thought that that was really a really fun way to create a movement and an energy that captures students' attention. So I created a time lapse of a little journey through my garden to generate some interest for students regarding flowers and plants and gardening. And as an introduction to plant reproduction. And as you can see, I'm just working very slowly here through the technology, and I apologize for that. You know, the uploading process was pretty quick. I noticed one of the participants was asking about ways to work through technological issues, and I've been using Dropbox to place things into as opposed to uploading directly from my computer. And that seems to be working a little more seamlessly. But now I'm seeing that when we open it in Flipgrid, it's got to go and find it in Dropbox. So that's one of the, I guess, one of the problems with utilizing this format. I can go back to my Flipgrid and just discuss some of the features that Flipgrid has that I've found really useful. The introduction that it provides for you at the beginning is really nice. I just did a quick little minute introduction for students to know what we're going to be talking about. And then they can click through these different technology portions of your Flipgrid to interact with your presentation. As far as assistive technologies go as well, Flipgrid can be really nice because it provides this immersive reader right to the left of your media. And so it can move the immersive reader, which is also having trouble loading. It takes your text and it makes it larger and it reads it back to you. So similar to some of the technologies that are available on Google, Flipgrid has also integrated some of those. They're closely associated with Microsoft, so I think that they can incorporate some of these technologies rather quickly. So yeah, here's the time lapse that I did of the garden, and the question that I asked students was to see if they could identify any of the plants which they see as they take the walk through my garden. It could be the fruit, it could be the flower, it could be the plant structure. anything that they think that they recognize, and then a question that they might have about the garden itself. So I'm trying to generate some interest in plants and plant structure through showing them the garden that I have here in my space. Next steps that I'm planning on utilizing are to have the students go out and find a flower that they can dissect. And then I'm going to be dissecting some flowers here to show the stamen and pistil and style and the different reproductive structures that are present in the flower and how that is incorporated into pollination and plant reproduction. Well, I apologize for how long all of my uploading is taking. I had a feeling when the previous presenters were really glitchy that mine was going to be the same way. Scrolling down here, I really like how Flipgrid has the ability to, let's see, you can have different modules within one unit. And that I found that to be really helpful to just kind of break things down into parts and provide some scaffolding for students. And also incorporate some diagrams and different graphics into the presentation. I'm not sure if this is going to load appropriately, but let's see if I can get it to work. So what you're viewing here is a time-lapse video of a journey through my garden. And what I did is I just walked super slowly through the garden, starting at my front door and then walking down and around through the gate and into the garden. And I paused at specific plants to give it a solid view of what those plants look like to generate some interest from the students. And I felt like they might be able to recognize some of the plants. There was a strawberry, and some onions, and then some more interesting ones like tomato and eggplant that they may not recognize quite as easily. Some corn. I'm trying to utilize this to generate some existing. So that's just a quick view of how you can use a time lapse to generate interest from students in what in your curriculum that you're presenting. Let's see. So the next thing I did was throw in some other pictures to further focus their interest. I used a squash plant to see if they could identify this a little closer. Again, it's not going to load very quickly. So there you can see it's just a close-up of one of the pictures, and you can see the flower and the fruit there starting to develop on the plant. So ways that we can bring distance learning into the students' homes and share some of what we're doing outside to try and draw them out into the landscapes around them will be helpful, because I've noticed a lot of frustration from students in the Zooms the meetings that I've joined, that they just seem bored and they need to get outside. So I thought that using Flipgrid in this manner would help to get students more excited about getting outside and potentially improve their engagement. So yeah, I'm not sure if that was very helpful, but it certainly highlights how Flipgrid can be utilized to engage in distance learning and help students to create and add depth to their learning and their sharing within the classroom environment. So, thanks so much, you guys, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Sorry if the connection was bad again.
All right, thank you, Willie. So is there any questions for Willie? All right. Oh, let's see here. Yeah. So yeah, thanks everyone for doing your presentations. I was hoping to do a little bit more questions for you, but in the interest of time, I think we can end it there. So yeah, so thank you all for taking the time doing the club and sharing these presentations. It's very good, innovative technology that we can share with other candidates and people throughout the SOE so that they can utilize. So
I know
thanks to,
I know we're
go
running
ahead.
a little bit short on time, but for all of you who are still here, I just want to say how grateful I was for the Q experience during this year. I know Spring Q ended up being virtual as opposed to in person, but what I was able to get from these conferences and from these experiences was information and resources that we just don't have time to fit in anywhere else. And I used so many of them and plan on using so many more of them in the future. So I was very, very grateful for the Q experience and would recommend it incredibly highly for any students who are coming in next year.
Cool.
Second that, Nolan. Woo.
Yeah. All right. Does anyone else have something they'd like to share about the Q experience before we go?
Yeah, I just want to say that I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I knew it had to do with technology. So I was like, sure, I'll go. And, we're only going to have more and more technology coming out. And so I just think that this is a great way for us as educators to keep, developing professionally and, keeping up with the times and keeping technology in our classrooms, both, instructionally, but also like Willie's presentation through Flipgrid, it keeps everyone social and sort of getting outside and other things like that, especially right now when we're all, quarantining and stuck at home and not necessarily interacting with our friends or students every single day. So.
Yeah. Yep. And it was great to for you all to take the time to share your highlights so that other candidates can utilize them in this time of distance learning and doing it virtually as well. So, all right. So thank you, Q Club, and thank you everyone that attended. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And,
thank you, Warren, for setting this up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Warren, for everything.
You're welcome. All right. Okay. Hope to talk to you soon. Take care.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
All righty. Bye-bye.